Hey coders! In this episode we are going to talk about how we use fonts in HTML and CSS. We are going to learn about website fonts and custom fonts and how to include them in our basic website. So let's jump into it. In the last episode we talked about colors in CSS, so I'm going to delete all these styles first and start with a clean slate. Let's go to our index.html. Here I'm gonna add another paragraph with more lines in it. After this h2 I'm gonna type p tab lorem 20, save it. So when we talk about fonts, we need to specify that they are so-called website fonts that our browser knows and recognizes, and there are other custom fonts that need to be imported in our HTML first for the browser to recognize. There are three major website font families: serif, sans serif, and monospace. The difference between them is subtle but important. For example, serif fonts have small lines at the end of some characters, illustrated with these red lines. These lines are called serifs. And sans serif means without lines, so you can see here these fonts have no serifs. The characteristics of the monospace font is that all characters have the same width. In order to use a website font, all we need to do is specify the font family. The font family property should hold several font names as a fallback. If the browser does not support the first font, it tries the next font, and so on. Start with the font you want and end with a generic font. If the name of the font family is more than one word, it must be in quotation marks. There are a lot of website fonts, and you can find them here if you go to W3 Schools and search for website fonts. So let's use one of them. Just for illustrating purposes, I want to use this Comic Sans cursive sans serif font. So all I need to do in my CSS, select, for example, body, font family. I'm gonna take this and paste it and save it. Go back to my first web page, and there we go. We are using the Comic Sans cursive sans serif font. Now let's see what other CSS properties can these fonts have. H1, this is our title. For example, font size. Let's add 20 pixels and save it. You can see that the font size changed. Let's add 50 pixels. Save it. We have another property called font style, and here let's specify italic. We will see that our H1 turned to an italic font. We have another property called font variant, and here we can specify, for example, small caps, and save it. You can see that all the letters changed to small caps. We have another property called font weight. As you can see here in this example, you have font weight starting from 100 till 900, and bold is usually 700. Bolder is, I think, 800 or 900. Inherit means that it will inherit, for example, from the body or whatever we specified font weight. So let's use, for example, 100. Save it. It's a little bit smaller. Now let's use 900. Save. You can see that the font is a lot bolder now. And let's use, for example, font weight bold. It's a little bit smaller. So let's style our paragraphs as well. I'm gonna say P, open the brackets. We have another property called line height, and we can specify something like 20 pixels. Save it. There's not much change, but if you put, like, for example, 40, you will see that the space between these paragraphs lines changed. This is the line height. We can specify 30, and it will move down a bit. And we have another property called font. This property is a shorthand property for all the rest of the font property. For example, we can specify that our font is italic, it is bold, 18 pixels, specify that it should have 40 pixels line height. Let's say, for example, it should be Georgia and a serif font. And let's save this. You can see that all our paragraphs changed. So font is a shorthand property that combines all these other properties in one line. Okay, so now let's talk about custom fonts. To use a custom font, like for example Google Fonts, first we need to navigate to this URL fonts.google.com. We need to select one of the fonts. I want to find a handwriting font, and I'm gonna uncheck all the rest. For example, I want to use this Amatic SC font. All I need to do is click this plus icon. It will add it down here. I can select it and I can customize it, add, for example, a bolder font to it. I can also add another font to it. Now you can see that I have two fonts, but I don't want to use two. I want to use just this one. So we can customize the font, we can add more fonts, we can remove them. We can take this link, copy it, and let's go to our index.html and add it before our CSS. I'm gonna paste it in and save it. Now all I need to do is specify the font family in the CSS. So I'm gonna copy this, and let's say, for example, change the body font to this one, our custom font. Save it, and there we go. This is the easiest way to include a custom font. But this only works if we have an internet connection. If we want to develop a website and we don't have an internet connection, then we need to download the fonts and include them in our project. So how would we do this? First, let's comment this line and save it. So we are not going to use this font from a CDN anymore. Let's go back to our Google Fonts, and here at the top we have an option, download this selection. So we are going to download it. It's going to give us a zip file. I'm going to open it. I'm going to create a new folder on my desktop called temporary files, and I'm going to drag these two fonts into the temporary file. The next step is to use a web font generator to generate the necessary files and styles to include in our project. We need to do this in order to optimize our fonts, to improve the load time, and create support for all the browsers. There are a lot of web fonts generators. I personally like to use FontSquire. FontSquire has a lot of other services, but we are going to use in this tutorial only the generator. It's free to use, so I will add the link to the description. Let's upload the fonts we want to include in our HTML. So I'm going to upload the bold and the regular fonts. Then let's leave it on the optimal, and let's check this agreement that we can legally use this font that we just downloaded from Google. Click on this download your kit. Now it will generate you the fonts and the styles that we need to include in our web page. It will also download a zip file. I'm going to open it, navigate to my project. Here I'm going to create a new folder called fonts, and inside these fonts I'm going to copy all of these files. So here we can see that it generated two HTML files for the bold and for the regular font. If we click on these, it will open the fonts for us. I'm going to close this down. So I'm going to delete the HTML files. These are some notes. You can read them if you want, but I'm not going to use them. And the next step is to open the CSS file in our code editor. As you can see here, it generated us some CSS3 font face code. Copy these properties. We need to add them at the top of our CSS file in our main CSS. So now we need to change this URL where our font is located. We created a separate fonts folder here, as you can see. First of all, I'm gonna select all of these URLs with Alt and click. So I'm going to have multiple cursors. I will be able to change them at the same time. So all we need to do is say slash, go outside from our main CSS, up the tree, and find the fonts folder. And then inside the fonts folder with another slash, we can find all of these fonts. Let's save it. Go back to our web page, take out this font family, and add it to our body. Ctrl V, and let's save it. And there we go. This is all you need to do in order to include a custom font from your files. Generally, when you create a website, it's good to download the fonts and use this method because the page will load faster, we have the fonts downloaded, we can load them immediately, and if we have a slow internet connection, we don't have to wait for the servers to send us the fonts. Another font type that we use in web development is the icon fonts. I personally use Font Awesome but there are a lot of other options out there. I will show you how to use these type of fonts as well in your project. I'm gonna leave a link in the description, but you can navigate also to fontawesome.com. Here I'm gonna click on the start menu, and here we can see that we have a CDN version, or if you go down here you have a download version. You can download these fonts, and if you follow these instructions, then you can include them in your HTML. For this tutorial I'm gonna use the CDN version, and I'm gonna click on this copy code. I'm going to go to my index before the main CSS, paste it and save it. In order to use them, we need to go to this second step. Let's search for an icon that we want to use. I'm going to click on the free version. I want to use only the free fonts. For example, let's add this address card. I'm going to click on it. All we need to do in order to include this in our HTML, and click on this and copy it. Go back to our code. My title, let's add this. Paste it and save it. And there we go. We have a font icon added next to our title. Let's just use another one. Let's say, for example, this Apple icon. I'm gonna click on it, paste it in our HTML, save it. If we want to style it, I'm gonna use this class FA Apple Alt. Go to my main CSS. For example, let's add some font size, 30 pixels, save. Let's add some more. Let's add, for example, 80 pixels. Save it. We can change the color, for example, red. It will behave exactly like a font. So this is it for today. We learned how to use all kinds of fonts in HTML and CSS. In the next video, we are going to talk about margins, paddings, borders, and the box model. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.